All right, Toby. Hello, Mike. I have five of, I guess, my courses and now admin certified. Congratulations. Um, can you lay out the daily tasks for an admin to be carried in Sandbox and those in live production? A list of these would be helpful. So I can't type that up right now, but okay, so in a nutshell, don't do anything in production. Okay. Never, ever, ever make even the smallest of changes in production. And that's because it's really easy to mess things up. And the reason that you have a sandbox is that any sort of changes that need to be made in a sandbox environment, tested out fully, and then pushed to either QA or user acceptance testing, and then ultimately pushed to production. You always want to have as well on the production side of things, you want to do a backup of anything that's important or of note so that if things go awry, you have a rollback plan in place. Okay. And so the daily tasks in the sandbox would be whatever you're tasked with for that day. And it could be any number of things. That could be creating reports or dashboards or changing security settings, creating a new app, creating a Lightning page, changing the landing page when someone opens up an application. And that may require different Lightning pages by app, by profile. You want to do all those sorts of things in a sandbox. Really, the only thing that you typically do in production would be creating new user accounts. You don't typically create a user in a sandbox and then you can't really push that up to production. You create them in production, okay? So I think that kind of covers it in a nutshell. And then on Trailhead, if you look under the different roles, they have some information on day in the life of admins. And let me see if I can find that readily. So if you go to Trailhead, salesforce.com, and it tends to default to the admin path. But if you go down below a little bit from there and select Salesforce Administrator, or actually if you go to Credentials, Certifications, that takes you to the admin view. And then scrolling down, what is an administrator? So career path admin. So this particular link I'll say is day in the life admin and the link to that. But as far as sandbox versus production, new users in production, everything else sandbox, push it, okay? And then beyond that, if there's problem, okay, and this kind of goes back to as well the person that was starting their new role and wanting to know how to succeed and what to brush up on. I can't remember the name of the person that asked that, but also for this individual wondering about production versus sandbox. Be sure in production that you're tracking field history, okay? And you can track up to 20 fields in field history. And if that's not enough, or if you need to track more field history, then enable chatter feed tracking and choose an additional 20 fields through chatter feed tracking in addition to the 20 for your field history tracking. Do that in production, do that in the sandbox so that it's in sync, okay, and select the same fields. But you want to be tracking history in production because if something goes wrong, you want some record on the actual record that the changes were made to see who made the change, what happened, and you'll be able to determine if that came by way of an automation or if it's something manual. That gives you more data around what is happening in production, okay? But for the most part, you're just dealing with sandbox and then pushing things with approval and not the other way around. Because if you make changes, just a small little change in production, like to a page layout, and then you don't make that corresponding change in the sandbox, then you make other changes in the sandbox and push that to production, then you've just lost that small little change that you made in production because the sandbox push will overwrite that, okay? So keep those things in mind. Field history tracking, chatter feed tracking for an additional 20 fields. That gives you the ability to track up to 40 fields. And that is something that I always wanted to do in production as well.